Hi, good morning. Today, 4th of April 2020. Continuing my series of video presentation on 2019 Answers Explained. Today's topic is Building Technology 1. So let us start. The first question, 2019 Building Technology 1 was on explain the development stages of a construction project and then describe the following roles in the development of a construction project: developer lah, contractor and consultant. So this type of question, a bit like essay writing, theory questions, usually always one of such question come out lah. So in every year in building technology one, there will be one this type of question. So asking about project management, construction project, how a developer organize the system of their job floor lah, who are the people involved, and then who are the specific experts involved. So this is a typical question that will be asked every year. I'd like to just maybe use this opportunity to go through the answer. So for the first part A, explain the development stages. Of course, this is straightforward. So briefing stage, designing stage, tendering stage, and then constructing stage. So in the most initial stage, the developer need to know whether this particular project need to have a certain reason of maybe cost reason, or maybe the main issue behind that land title and all these things. So all these need to be sorted out in the briefing stage, that they know and they can start this project uh, with the approval given by state planning. After that, the design stage where they need to know about architect and architectural construction with the engineer to know how the building going to be like. And then after that, all this been decided, then they give it to contractor. So tendering for how to do maybe different parts of the job. And then having open up the tender, they decide who to award the tender to, and then eventually start the construction. So the construction development program project in some job flow is like this. So just now the briefing stage, and in fact earlier than the briefing stage, there should be feasibility study. So this feasibility study, as I said just now, when the land title is been ascertained, and then the project has got the planning permission already approved by the council or the authorities, the state planning authorities, then the whole thing need to go through real study like feasibility study, whether the soil, how long this been landfill. Example, some of the land, because there were potholes or big holes before, maybe mining land and all those land where they need to have filling the landfill. So the landfill in some places is at least 20 years. So all these need to go through tests and feasibility to in fact construct building on top of this plot of land. So all those things need to be decided. And after that, the whole thing being briefed and being agreed upon, the developer thinking that yes, I will do this project because there has been green light given, environmental assessment all done, all that already considered. Yes, there is a chance to get this on, and then the briefing of this all this background information during the briefing stage, thinking about how to get the certain loose ends being tied up, and then therefore go to the next level, which is the architect. The architect will throw out the design of how to avoid some of the land, because the land has got maybe odd shape, not exactly square. So how to design to get the maximum use of the land, and then the planning according to the already approved planning permission given by the authority. So of course, the architect were already involved in the earlier days. In fact, before the briefing stage, the architect could have drawn out a plan to be submitted to the town and country and the town planning section of the authority. So all that were already been been coordinated. So again, after all this design and detail of the design all done, then of course to know how much is the cost and who can build it at the cheaper cost, then they go through the tender system. So the tender system means inviting all the contractors. Okay, for contractor who is able to build drainage, then the drainage system, the road system, who is the contractor, and then the contractor would have to bid or to give the quotation on how much tendering amount that they're going to do for this project. So at the end, the developer, they themselves may have the building capacity, but then they may not want to do everything. That means they may only do one of the parts of the building, but then the remaining parts of the area surrounding it, or maybe even the building itself, the remaining part may be given to some other contractors to do. So all that tendering approval done, then they start commencement, they commence the construction. So this is roughly the normal scenario how development project will go through in the stages of the pre-construction. Then after that, they will start construction. So the second question part, we explain the following roles in the development. Of course, developer, as I said just now, there are a lot more work. So they have to, from the concealing, from the initial site finding, the site finding, the soil finding, the accessibility finding, the road system, and then even up to area of environment system or environmental assessment by the authorities. All that has to comply. After that, the financing, of course, is a major part for the developer. So the developer need to finance the whole system of how construction is done and who is the contractor in charge, and then later pay the contractor. So project financing, project timing, assembly of team, and then management for the developer. For the contractor, of course, the contractor can come in as a main con, and then later they are subcon. So this is very much depending on the system, how the contractor wants, as well as how the developer wants. Some of the contractors have their own machinery, so they are actually main con as well as subcon into one system. However, there are many contractors who are just main con. That means they have got facility and equipment and all the manpower for just doing the main structure, whereas the smaller ones, they will sub out to others. So when they sub out to others, these subcons would have to get paid by the main con. So the developer pays the main con, and then the main con only pays the subcon. So the worst is become a subcon, and then the main con itself cannot cope with the project, and then the main con itself go bankrupt. Then the subcon who are doing the smaller things are eventually not paid by the developer, because the developer only hold on to the main con for the main con contract. So this is very common you hear in the market. So anyway, contractors' job is to make sure they have a management team, they have the machinery, they have the ability to construct. So at the end, they are supposed to deliver what is been agreed upon in the contract, the construction contract, and then could deliver the jobs. So at the end, responsibility is very much on the main con. After all, the main con is the main action person to make sure the project follow a timeline. And after whole thing being completed, then pass on to the developer. The developer make the regular check, and then ensure the quality, and pay the contractor, the main con. So of course there are other things like consultants that are involved in the question they ask about consultant. So this consultant here actually starts from as early as field testing, soil testing, feasibility study, environmental assessment, the impact and environmental impact assessment, and all those you require the consultant. So the consultant can be consultant engineer, consultant architect, consultant environmental engineer, and all those people. So of course we say here, well, they are specific for their expertise, and then the idea is that there is of course by law certain things need to follow a standard, and then these are the engineering standard that they need to adhere to, and then after all, the project may get into trouble for doing piling. Suddenly something happen, they cannot consider piling in anymore. There is no way to go in anymore, or there is no end to it. Piling never stop. Then they will be too high the cost, or then they will go back to the consulting engineer, and then get the problem solved lah. So the consulting engineer need to investigate and need to adjust the situation on site. So all these things are the job of the consulting engineer. So all these are done by engineering who are experts in the field of their expertise. Right, I think this question is straightforward. Essay writing, a lot of theory, a lot of elaboration, a lot of explanation, explaining. So elaborate and explain, make it easily understood. So this question you probably can score up to 80% of the marks. So I guess this is a question that everyone must try, not to avoid this type of question. This is a question without drawing. It's just essay writing, so it is very easy for people who are good in writing. Let us move on. Right. Question number 2, talk about load bearing and frame structure in concrete over timber. So define the term load bearing structure and frame structure. State the differences between these two structures. Then part B, concrete is usually used to construct a building structure rather than timber. Explain. So part A is 15 marks, part B is 10 marks. So part A need to put more effort. So load bearing structure versus frame structure. This one is in fact maybe easier to draw out first. If you can draw a frame structure and then draw a load bearing structure. In a way, I have done a question like this earlier, my own design question. This is about load bearing wall building and frame wall building. This is Viva City in Kuching before it is fully completed. So this is a frame, of course, a frame structure. You can see all the beams and the supports. All that you can see. The whole structure sits on a few beams, a few poles, and a few structure of support. So generally, frame structure is composed of beams and columns. So this one is considered columns. The tiang is considered columns. And then there will be bricks wall up the place. But the whole structure is like our skeleton. It supports the body. Our skeleton in our body supports all the organs and the tissues and muscles. So skeleton is like the beams and the column. So with the load being transferred into the beams via the floor and then down to the foundation through the columns. So all this thing goes down to the ground through a beam in the columns, and then at the end supported by the foundation that is beneath the building. Load bearing is different. Load bearing means there is no column, there is no beam. A lot of it is sitting on top of each other. Thus you can think of a very specific one is pyramid. Pyramid in Egypt, there is no foundation, there is no column, and there is no beams. So the whole lot is like blocks of bricks, blocks of huge blocks of concrete or stone or rock sitting on top of each other. So it itself it provides a column and provides a support. So the lower one supports the upper one. So if you look at pyramid structure, it's actually broad at the bottom and then thick at the top. So that means it is supporting from the base to the top, actually all wall up. So in fact, the wall is supporting itself like that also. If you were to think of putting up a wall onto a ground, then that means the lower bricks will support the upper bricks. So load bearing means it actually supports the upper units. So it's transferred, the load is all transferred to the ground through the each and every block of the masonry block. Masonry block means brick blocks. So they are generally characterized by having small window to wall ratio. So this type of structure, because there is no beams and then no columns, so they cannot open up very big holes. They cannot open up very big opening, because when they open up opening, it's like the one on top of the opening has no support below it, because the below it is actually opening is empty. So you cannot have a very big opening, not like a structure where there is beams and columns, then you can actually leave the whole space actually not covered, so it becomes a big window, right? And then in the case of no beams, then you cannot, because when you do not have the beams, whatever on top needs support, it would not be able to allow this when it is a big opening. So when there is a big opening without beam, they usually use the word lintel. Without the lintel to support, then the whole lot from the above would push down, and then therefore the whole thing will collapse. So load bearing buildings can be found in the earlier years in the old buildings, because they were not able to do foundation at the technology that they had. So there are a lot of this type of building using big rock. So the big rock becomes a beam. So when they put a big piece of rock on top of two pieces of rock, then the middle become a empty space. Like here you have a big piece of rock, another one has another big piece of rock, then you put another one big piece of rock on top. Then the one that is in the empty space becomes a window or a doorway. So this, in this form of a building, it becomes a load bearing. So a load bearing building. So a lot of these buildings can be found in the old days in the ancient castle and in the ancient ruins. You can say ruins of the old relics, relics of the old structure. Right, I think you all can understand this type of answering, easy to answer. Just saying that the difference between beam, column, and then the other one is there's no beam and column, and then a lot of it is just by a piece, a block of structure or rock to support load bearing. So the second part, concrete, is usually used to construct a building structure rather than timber. So this type of question came out a few times. In fact, not just comparing concrete to timber, but comparing concrete to steel and steel to timber. So there are advantages and disadvantages of this type of material, whether it's on steel or timber or concrete or timber. There is always this reading that you need to do. So here we have one reading, which are timber versus concrete versus steel. So this particular reading, in fact, has a very comprehensive comparison between the three types of material. So in this case, it's quite lengthy to read, a lot of things to read. So I will recommend that if you are reading this, then just take it as a background reading. But at the end, the answer here is just choosing from the comparing of timber and concrete. We leave out steel because here in this question it did not ask about steel. So it asked about concrete versus timber. So generally, essentially, you understand that timber is also rare now because it's cost reason, because timber now is very rare, very expensive. Concrete has got advantages better than timber. That's why it is now more on using concrete. So generally, the advantages is that here are advantages of reinforced concrete. So of course, the main one that we understand now is concrete can be built into different shapes and sizes. So you can actually do it on site, where timber usually you only limited to certain type of size. So at the moment now, especially timber is becoming lesser and lesser. You cannot get big chunk of timber to do big building. So wood being the issue here, can it be open to a risk of termite? Not to drill into detail on the technology of it. Generally, there are a lot of advantages with concrete. Less concern about termite, less concern about fire, less concern about cost, and then also flexibility of different sizes and shape. So usually people choose to use concrete now than timber for these few reasons. Let us move on. So question always ask about this part, question number 3, always ask about brick bonding and various type of bonding. In a way, this is consider more like skill on the ground skill job for a estate agent to use this information or to use this knowledge in the field of estate agency. Probably not so much nowadays than many years ago. So this brick bonding thing, because now all the time we were talking in the question number 2 about concrete, and then question number 2 part A about the types of frame building or load bearing building. So at the time of today's building technology, we always choose to use frame building, frame construction. Load bearing and the whole wall load bearing type of construction is obsolete already, not very well practiced. But then when in the old days, when foundation technology making foundation or piling is not as advanced as today, a lot of the previous technology were all using load bearing. And then when you use load bearing, you will be very concerned about the brick bonding issue. The brick bonding issue is that if your wall, the whole lot of wall, your building usually consists of wall and windows and doors and then the roof. So the wall becomes a load bearing wall. And then now the load bearing wall need to support all the structure on top of it. So if you do not have a very good beam support, concrete with reinforced concrete. Reinforced concrete here means concrete block with the steel inside, steel bar inside, so it can really support very heavy load on top. So in the old days when there were no this type of technology to transfer all these columns as well as beams to the ground, to the foundation, so they build walls with less support on the ground. So the whole lot would be sitting onto the ground, and then each and every single brick or masonry actually need to support the one on top of it. So the bonding structure, the way how these blocks of bricks by arrangement become very important. So you cannot be arranging the bricks into a structure which at the end it doesn't support itself, and then it crumbles over time. So that is the reason of this question, brick bonding and various type of bonding. Continuous vertical joints must be avoided in brick work bonding. So part A, explain. Part B, using diagram, differentiate the following types of brick bonding: stretcher, header bond, English garden bond, furnish bond, and furnish garden bond. So as you can see, this question, part B is the 15 marks, and then part A is the 10 marks. So part A, continuous vertical joint, giving 10 marks. Actually, this question is quite a technical question. So in fact, if you understand that, well, it is a load bearing wall. So if you think of it like let's say a block of cake, that means you buy a square block of cake, and then now this cake is a rectangular shaped cake. Then you put on say a plate, a long plate, and then your cake has got some crack in the middle. So now you hold up one side of the cake will break. So the cake will break on the vertical line. So the vertical line here means continuous vertical joint must be avoided, because any weakness in the middle of the block, in the middle of the wall, would actually make this wall weak. So here you can see, I want to highlight this particular picture. So as you can see, the bricks, if it is laid on top of each other just nicely, and then having the vertical line. So this vertical line is weak. So when the certain part of the land supporting it become weak, that means this portion of the land is of no foundation. So this portion of the soil is weak. Then the whole lot of the brick would sink. So when it sinks, this wall actually breaks. Another one is the shear force. That means doing the left and the right. So if the shear force pulling from each side, let's say here the length is not even, so the length here is actually stronger here, but then weaker on the other side. Then this whole thing will topple, will actually swing over to the other side. So when it swings over to the other side, this structure, which because of the vertical line, vertical joint, this one cannot hold it together. So that is why you see in brick bonding, they need to be crossed. They need to cross, like you cross your finger like that, so that when you cross, it hold back the forces from both sides and then up and down. So that's why brick bonding must have different stretcher and the header. So let us explain the stretcher and the header. We go back. Continuous, let's say a continuous vertical brick joint has weak point because along its vertical brick bonding, lateral thrust from both sides or gravity from top down can tear the wall apart. So this is what I wanted to say. So of course, a lot of us will understand, but then in the exam, you may not be able to think of the word to use to explain your understanding. So this one is again based on your practice and usual use of the vocabulary. So in exam, you need to be careful on this part. A lot of time we can understand the topic of discussion, but then the problem of writing out, especially we are not in everyday writing out this type of terms when you use in construction. So bonding of brickwork is arrangement of the brickwork in a wall, column, or pier, which you give maximum overlapping and no continuous vertical joint. The purpose is to obtain maximum strength, and then while the load carried out by the wall, and then ensure lateral stability and resistance to side thrust. So just now I was talking pulling left and the right, that is called side thrust, and then create an acceptable appearance. Of course, a lot of time this become in the old days because they do not cover up the wall. That means you can see actually bricks on the wall. So therefore, the types of pattern may be important also for artistic value. So load bearing wall, usually if you see in a garden where they don't really do piling for the soil, so they will just put up a simple wall and then this become their fence. So in the modern house now, you don't see the way it is bonding inside, and most of it is now not the red brick, not the red brick. It becomes a block. They call it the block. Some of it actually quite empty inside, so it's lighter so that it will not sink into the ground. So these are construction modern days where they try to reduce cost because piling means foundation means cost. So let us move on to part B. Part B talk about different type of brick bonding. So this one is important to explain. So if you do not understand, then don't work on this type of question because you can get it totally wrong. So this one I will choose to go to this picture. So some of these things can only be explained in picture. In building technology, you need to draw. So if you cannot draw, then you have problem. Well, there are a few one that I want to reload so that you can see clearer in the picture. Okay, this is a better one, I think. Bond. Okay. All right, this is the piece I want to highlight. Okay. There are different names for different side of the brick. So if you say stretcher is onto the side, on the longer side or the rectangular side, and then header is actually on the smaller side, the width side of the brick. And then you have the sailor, you have the soldier, and then you have the rope, and then the shiner. But then these are different terms. We just not need to confuse each other. So we just use stretcher and header. So stretcher and header, this is actually important in stretcher and header bond. So if you go and check stretcher and header, then you understand that the way it is joined together. So let us see the stretcher and header bonding. Now you understand what is stretcher and what is header. So if you land the brick this way with the stretcher side and then overlapping it with the header side, stretcher side and a header side, then you will have a pattern. This pattern, in a way, you can see this is header side, and then this is the stretcher side. So your one layer is all on the stretcher side facing up, and the other one layer is all the header side facing up. So this is called English bond. So English bond in this way is actually the strongest bond out of the many ways of bonding. So one of the bonding is called English bond, another one is called Flemish bond. Flemish bond is also called a Dutch bond. Anyway, the difference is that the English bond is actually stretcher one layer and then header another layer, right? What is Flemish bond is interesting. Flemish bond is actually stretcher and then you have a header and then stretcher and then you have a header, as you can see. So English bond and Flemish bond, English bond is quite strong for the strength it has, but then maybe the pattern not so nice. Whereas the Flemish bond, the pattern is nicer, but not as strong as English bond. So let us maybe see another picture. Flemish bond, you can see this is header. Anyway, this is something which is called queen. Why? Because there is if you take this portion, stretcher, header, stretcher, header, stretcher, header, right? Then the below is the opposite, header, stretcher, like that. But then when you do this until it goes to the end of the wall, when it comes to the end of the wall, then it becomes uneven. So the end of the wall, you cannot be uneven. So you have to use the whole block. So here it uses a header on one side and then the stretcher on the other side. And then here it uses stretcher on this side, but then the header is the other side. But because of these issues, there will be gaps. So these gaps, they would fill up with half a brick or 1/4 of the brick just to fill up this space. In this case, it's half of the brick maybe. So this part is actually called the queen joint. So when you have a stretch, because you want to have a purpose of very nice pattern here, and then you would leave the side also straight, then you have the joint, the column part whereby they have to fill up with another half a brick or one brick. So anyway, this is Flemish bond. This one is all header bond, because all the header facing out, and then here at the bottom also facing out. So all the header bond. So this type of bonding is called header bond. You can also have a stretcher bond. So every brick is put on the side by side. That means the stretcher facing out. Then you have all the stretcher facing out. Then it's called stretcher bond. So Flemish bond is stretcher and then header, and then English bond is one layer of header or one layer of stretcher. After that, another layer of the different one. And then you also have the situation of uneven end. So you close the end by using the queen joint. So anyway, not to confuse you if you cannot understand, so you need to go back and check in the internet how are the different bondings. So the purpose of this bonding is to, as covered in the initial question, that is part cannot have a vertical line. There cannot be a vertical brick joint, so that it can protect the wall from falling to the side because of the truss, the side truss, and also sinking because of the gravity. So this is the purpose of this type of different types of joints, and then the best is the English garden bond, English garden wall. So English garden wall joint, English bond is the strongest of the all. Anyway, I hope you can understand. If cannot, then you need to go to different search for the pictures. So let us move on to question 4. State 4 general principle of window design and then use sketches. Explain the type of window based on method of opening. So this is a common question where they always ask or on the part of window, the different types of window, how the window, and this is important for the fact that estate agency, when you go to see a building, a house, especially a residential house, the types of window opening is also very common. People choose to have different type of window opening. So here, the first one, step 4 general principle. The 4 general principle are quite simple. Just how much you want to open. Because your window is for light to come in, wind to come in ventilation. So how wide you want to open. So purpose of, say, maybe function of allowing ventilation and light, and also to control maybe in our weather, to control rain from coming into the house. Then color and attractiveness. So the principle is like you have to have color darker if it's a very bright house near to the sun. And also maintenance, you have to consider using certain way of maintaining the window. So window which is the higher up, that means there are some ventilation window on top of the kitchen or on the higher level of the toilet, then you will know that maintenance is difficult. So you probably want to have some design of the window to avoid having to maintain so much. So this type of reason may be, again, functionality, and then the purpose of aesthetic use, the way it looks. So types also in a way maybe have the effect on what are the maintenance required. So let's say we have different types of window. Here you can see fixed non-opening one. That means you have a fixed window, you can't open. Then you have a casement window, you have the awning window, you have the tilt and turn, and then you have a single double hung, and then you have the horizontal slider. So most of our window in Malaysia is actually casement, awning, and horizontal slide. Fixed is usually for the country where they do not need to open very much, like some of the recent movies about people who stay in basement, like the one in Korea, the Parasite, which is a movie about communities who are less affordable. They rent places of the basement. So this basement has got window that view out to the street. So this type of windows actually for purpose of just light, so that light can go in. But then it is not for opening, because you cannot open. Then the street dirt and also the street water flow into the house, and the rain water goes into the house. Of course, you cannot seal up the whole place completely, and then avoid water from running in. But then that is not the main purpose of this type of window. So this type of fixed non-operating window usually is not in Malaysia, because we don't stay in basement very much. Then you have the tilt and turn, which is a lot of time probably not using it daily, day in, day out. Tilt and turn, not our style in Malaysia, because fact that when you open out, you prefer to be awning. So here in Malaysia, we see a lot of awning window, because for the fact that it can be able to withstand rainwater from coming in from the top, because the casement window and awning window, the difference is that in the awning window, the rainwater won't come in, but then the casement window, rainwater goes directly into the inside. So we would prefer to have awning window rather than casement window. Of course, the horizontal slider is the most common. Then the horizontal slider, the disadvantage is that you can at any time only open half of the window. You cannot open the whole window. Whereas awning, you can open the whole window. Casement, you can open the whole window. So probably because of convenience, because these two, if it is on the ground floor, then it will be not convenient for people on the street, or your garden, you need to come out, and then sometimes you need to walk along the corridor, the side of the building, then you're gonna hit by the awning that is protruding out. So the horizontal slider is better in this case because it doesn't come out of the building, so you don't get obstructed when you walk along the wall. So all these are example of how you want to explain the different types of window suitable for Malaysian houses. So this one I have provided one answer. This is 2011 question 3. So this question as in window opening. In fact, for our current question, which is question 4, 2019 question 4, is actually a whole repeat. Whole repeat. So anyway, we move on to question 5. Question 5 asks about ceiling, suspended and fixed ceiling finishes. Again, this is a repeat question from past year. Using sketches, describe the difference between fixed ceiling and suspended ceiling. So usually in building technology, either building technology 1 or building technology 2, you need to do drawing. So always remember, bring some color pencil, marker pen, ruler, and sometimes drawing apparatus to give a better drawing, so that your better drawing would explain to the marker examiner that you understand the question, and then easier for the marker to give you marks. Because the marker for this type of subject, they don't want to read a lot of essay writing, because essay writing is not their strong point. They are basically the engineer or architect or building experts. So they are not for writing. They are also not like lawyer who reads a lot of cases in alphabets and words. So these are people who like to read drawings. So if you can draw well, you can score and you can pass building technology very well. So here I will just follow the past years where there were two, I think two lah. So 2016 question 5. Right, different types of ceiling. There is fixed ceiling, direct fixed ceiling, and then you have also the suspended ceiling. So a lot of time we are now looking at suspended ceiling in big super mall because there's frame structure, beams and all the columns, and then this is suspended from the beams and the columns. So you have a frame structure, and then you have the cover up of this ceiling. So different types of material can be used, and then the advantages and the disadvantages of the ceilings. So a lot of our current building in a condominium all are slab, the barren slab, from the top floor. If you go to the frame structure, then the slab onto the upper floor, which is on the part. So there are people doing plaster ceiling, which is actually more like a suspended ceiling. So here the whole piece is plaster up. There can be just fixed ceiling where people have got a lot of timber flooring house. That means the timber suspended timber flooring. Then the fixed ceiling is a piece of wood or plywood or whatever gypsum board being fixed onto the beams. So our scenario here in commonly condominium apartment style is a slab, the cement slab, and then we have plaster ceiling, which is actually suspended ceiling. Right. There are different material used, type of ceiling. So you can use those which are soundproof acoustic ceiling tiles. You can also have plaster board, all the different types of material, and then plaster ceiling. And then they are even now similar to a lot of building construction material used in flooring. So some sort of metal, metal pieces which you can fix for your ceiling. So this is called the metal plank suspended ceiling using metal. This one actually can be seen a lot in Kuching International Airport. So if you are at the arriving hall of the Kuching International Airport, you come out to the to the load and unloading bay of the outside. That means if you overlook the ceiling on the top, the ceiling of the building, then you see all these metal piece, metal plank ceiling. Okay, then not to do further explaining for the ceiling, we move on to question number 6. Question number 6 asks about define concrete state and function of each material used in concrete mix. Clarify workability of concrete. Explain the factor influencing workability of concrete. Again, this is a standard repeat of past year. And in fact, building technology has a lot of repeat from past year. It's inevitable because a similar question will be repeatedly asked because you do not expect it to be an engineering depth. You don't expect this course to produce engineer. And then you only need the estate agents to at least understand some of the basics of building. And then these basics would be something that you can see, you can actually explain to your client. So at least you are in front of the client having the knowledge of explaining why certain thing is like that. So some of the repair work need to be done, you need to explain to your client. So this is about concrete. Concrete is part of the building, and you need to know in the process of making concrete, what are the things that is required. So of course, you do not need to make concrete yourself. You just need to understand that concrete has certain features and the way that it is being used in construction. Define concrete and the function of each material used in concrete mix. Concrete is actually 3 material together, the binding material, like your glue, and then the aggregates, like your sand and your rock, and then water. So in a way, there are 3 component aggregates: water and Portland cement. So Portland cement in local language is just cement. So cement, you can buy 50 kilo per bag, and then you add in water and different type of aggregate. So different type of aggregate means gravel or crushed stone or sand or coarse sand. So depending on the quality of the work that you want to achieve. So if you say you want to achieve a concrete block, which is going to be stand outside as a wall, so then maybe you don't need it to be very fine and you don't need it to be very smooth on the surface. So probably your aggregates will be more like rock, stones, crushed stone, and you're not so much of a sand because you allow it to be in the outside. But then if you say, okay, I want to use this cement concrete inside the house, so therefore you need to be concerned about its look. So you probably want it to be better off, not so big stone. So the stone on the surface, it appears also will not be too big. So that means you need to use more fine stones. So the question number part B is on the workability. So now workability is actually a big part of the question last time. There were questions about workability as in the whole question, meaning to say it's very chemistry. It asks about how workability is and technology of how to measure the workability. So workability as in concrete, actually a definition is the property of a fresh concrete, which is baru make. That means you make the aggregates, water and cement together, and then you look at its workability, how easily it can be used. So this can be measured by a few methods. One of it is called slump test. So of course, you want to put this as an example. You're making a dough, making bread. Then amount of flour, amount of water, and then maybe your baking powder, and then amount of your other ingredients into the dough. So this dough eventually will settle, right? So how smooth and how thick and how movable it is, it actually is the workability. So here, if you see the slump test, and let us go to slump test. So concrete slump test. So there is a method to measure. So they got a cone, slump cone, then they put it in, and then they see how remove the cone, and then they see how this particular uh, concrete actually become softer or stronger or maintain its shape or not. So this is a measurement of how workable the concrete is. Right, not to drill into detail on this, there are another few tests that can test the workability, flow test, compacting factor test, VB consistometer. All these are quite severe engineering, no need to go into detail. Let us move on to, so question number 7 asks about floor finishes. This is a commonly asked question. Every year, usually there will be one question about window, one question about ceiling, and one question about floor. Sometimes the roof, one question about roof. So one question about floor means usually the types of floor finishes. So floor finishes means tile or timber, solid timber floor all these are finishes. So explain the factors to be considered in selecting floor finishes. Part B suggests and give reasons for selecting the type of floor finishes suitable for the following area. So in fact, the first one is saying that what are the considerations for your floor finishes, and then in particular part B. So it's actually the elaboration of part A. So living area, kitchen, bedroom, porch. So when you answer this question, first is you just read part A, then you probably give examples that is in part B. So rather you must read the whole question first, part A and part B, and then now design your answer for part A, and then no need to write part A in length, and then part B you say I refer back to part A. That is not the correct way to answer the question. So you know the whole question, and then strategize your answer by just giving enough for part A, because 10 marks only part B is 50 marks. So you just cannot write part A in length and then later say part B refer to part A, which is the examiner would be frustrated. So rather you just write part A, general finishes, types of maybe factor, explain the factor to consider, and then part B specific, then you give more detail on living area, why you choose this type of floor finishes, kitchen area, because this 15 marks are divided by 4, roughly about 4 marks, 4 marks per each answer. So if you say, okay, I can't write very much for porch, car porch is very simple, either cement or tile. You don't want to use car porch floor finishes as a carpet, right? So of course, your marks for car porch will be probably easy to get almost full marks. Whereas living area or different living area, a lot of different types of floor finishes that you can use. So for this, maybe the lecturer, the marker will give only high marks if you write a lot. But for car porch, you cannot write a lot anyway. So probably you get a full marks for here. But whether this 1, 2, 3, 4, each and every answer is 4 or 3.8 marks is hard to say. It's up to the lecturer, up to the marker. So anyway, we just continue. So the answer for part A is, it's a repeat question again. Factor to consider, of course, there are various factors: durability, aesthetic value, acoustic, infection control, cleaning, maintenance, environmental impact cost. So this is in length, a lot of things to write. So in fact, for part A, you can write quite a lot already for 10 marks. And then part B, some of these are repeated again in the way that why you choose a certain type of flooring for the certain area. So let us maybe just pick one to answer. So maybe here, kitchen, toilet, this is 2013. So in 2007 and 2019, last year, they say living room. So living area is on part 3. So now move the juggle in the different brick and tiles. Okay, what are the advantages? Why you choose ceramic tile? Why you choose ceramic tile? Why you use marble, granite tiles? Why you use quarry tile? Why you use slag? Why you use carpet? Why you use sheets? Sometimes they use this type of rubber vinyl because these are things that is seamless. That means there is no edges. You actually cover the whole piece onto the ground, and there is no end. Then the whole thing will seal up to the wall. So this type of wear is actually used in hospital, because hospital you cannot have gaps or the the edges of the tiles which can trap dirt and then have infection. For later, like you have to be disinfected because a lot of these places can trap dirt and then eventually become places for fungus and also for germs. So of course, doing hospital, the floor material specific lah. So floor material for is terrazzo. They use term terrazzo because the whole piece is a big piece of rock. They make it into slimless. There is no gaps and there is no hole in between. Whereas for now, because tiles, when you join the tiles, you definitely have got the space in between. That is the problem. So using sheets, vinyl and linoleum sheets, you can actually have slimless, no end. So there is a whole piece that is covered up. So you cannot see carpets, area where you need to be very clean, like lab, like laboratory, or manufacturing plant where it's very clean. You cannot have carpets because carpet traps a lot. And then you definitely cannot have carpet in hospital. But in the hotel, carpet in the hotel very dirty. Example of how you want to explain the terms of flooring for different parts of the place. Right, I think completed the whole section. And building tech, one building tech tools are actually 2 paper lah. So this is 4 out of 7 questions. Thank you very much for following this answer explain for 2007 question analysis. Thank you very much.